The 7 words he said left me speechless, my face burning, and my heart racing. I had ended a relationship of nearly 5 years not long before this happened. Almost 6 months had passed, but I still did not have the courage to open my heart to anyone new. After the breakup, I turned down every invitation from my friends. At work, I became quieter and more withdrawn. As soon as the workday ended, I went straight home. Seeing that I was still unable to move on, a few close female colleagues enthusiastically tried to set me up with someone. The man they had in mind was Tung, the coworker who sat across from me and had worked with me for almost 3 years. He was 2 years older than me, calm, reserved, and not much of a talker. Our relationship outside of work, we had almost nothing to talk about. I had never imagined that there could be anything between us beyond the word coworkers. Then came our company summer trip. The trip ended with a lively gala night. Everyone was eating, singing, laughing, and constantly raising their glasses to one another. I was never good at handling alcohol, but that night, one person after another invited me to drink. I felt too awkward to refuse, so I kept accepting every glass. Tung happened to be sitting next to me. When he noticed how flushed my face had become, he leaned closer and said quietly, "Stop drinking. You're already drunk." I smiled and shook my head. "Just let me get drunk for one night." Without realizing it, I began telling him about my breakup, the sleepless nights, and the fear that I would never be able to trust someone enough to fall in love again. He did not comfort me with empty or predictable words. He simply sat there and listened, occasionally handing me a glass of water. His quiet presence somehow made me feel lighter. By the time the party ended, I could barely walk on my own, so he helped me back to my room. What happened afterward existed only in scattered fragments of memory. Neither of us was thinking clearly. In a moment when alcohol overpowered reason, my loneliness and his sympathy pushed us both across a boundary we had never intended to cross. When I woke up the next morning, I froze. Seeing him still in the room, I could only bury my face in my hands. I had never imagined that I would end up in a situation like that. I did not blame him. I only blamed myself for losing control. I hurriedly got dressed and whispered, "I'm sorry," then I practically ran out of the room. Throughout the journey home, I could not bring myself to look at him. I told myself that it had simply been a mistake. I hoped that once we returned to the office, everything would eventually be forgotten, but on our first day back at work, I immediately began avoiding him. I deliberately went to get water whenever he was in a meeting. I changed my lunch schedule. Whenever our eyes accidentally met, I quickly looked down. At the end of the day, after everyone else had left, he walked over to my desk. Before I could say anything, he looked directly into my eyes and said, "You have to take responsibility for me." Those 7 words left me speechless. My face burned, and my heart began racing. Flustered, I replied, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean for what happened that night to happen." Seeing how nervous I was, he smiled. "What I mean is, you have to take responsibility for making it impossible for me to hide my feelings any longer." I stared at him in disbelief. Then he confessed that he had liked me for a long time. When he found out that he had a boyfriend, he deliberately kept his distance. Later, when he learned that we had broken up, he still did not dare to tell me how he felt because he was afraid I would think he was taking advantage of me while I was vulnerable. "What happened that night was an accident," he said. "But my feelings for you aren't. I don't want you to think I'm only approaching you because of that night." I did not know how to respond. After everything I had been through, I did not feel confident enough to begin another relationship. When I told him I needed time, he simply smiled. "That's okay, I'll wait." From that day on, he never mentioned what had happened between us again. Everything seemed to return to normal, except that every morning I would find a carton of milk or a few mint candies waiting on my desk. What I did not know, on days when I was too busy to eat lunch, he would send me a simple message, "Remember to eat lunch or you'll feel exhausted." Whenever I worked overtime, he waited for me in the lobby, always claiming that we happened to be going in the same direction. When I refused his offer, he only smiled and left without me. He never pressured me or made me feel uncomfortable. It was his patience that slowly began to change my heart. One evening after work, a message from him appeared on my phone. "Would you have dinner with me? There won't be any alcohol this time." I could not help laughing. During all that time, he had never brought up our night together or used it as an excuse to demand a chance from me. He had simply stayed by my side, caring for me without asking for too much and patiently waiting for me to open my heart on my own. I looked through the glass doors and saw him standing in the lobby, his hands in his pockets, looking as calm as he always did. For the first time since that night, I no longer wanted to run away from the past. I typed my reply, "Okay." There was no alcohol on our date that evening. There were no reckless moments or blurred memories. There were only two fully sober people sitting across from each other, choosing to give one another a genuine chance. Even now, when I look back, I still believe that some connections begin in ways no one could ever predict, but only sincerity can make someone choose to stay.